Before this video starts, I do just want to say my normal style of video is a bit of commentary from me and then a bit of gameplay relating to what I'm talking about to try and structure the video a bit. Today's video is going to be a bit different. It's going to basically all be commentary from me because as I played through Crossfire, my voice was still incredibly rough and I wasn't quite there yet, so I wasn't really talking throughout my playthrough, but I hope you still enjoy. Two of the most anticipated PSVR2 games of August are now out, and I'm covering one of them tomorrow, which is Firewall, but I'm covering the other one today, and that is Crossfire Sierra Squad. This one has been on my radar since the trailers for PSVR2, but it also is on Steam, and it comes as either a co-op or a single-player PvE shooter. It's set within modern military parameters, and essentially takes you through either a story campaign, 50 co-op missions with 2 players, or a horde mode. Today, I'm going to be talking about the main campaign. I might make a video on the co-op in the future, depends if I get around to playing it that much since I'm still working on my Firewall review, so today we'll just be focused on the story. There are 13 levels throughout the entire game, starting off at a fairly small scale and then gradually getting bigger and bigger. The story that follows through all of these levels is nothing to write home about. It's very rushed, you don't get to know the characters at all really. Their motivations are very generic, the voice acting is okay, and the two factions are only really separated via their skins in the game. However, it does set the stage for you to go through these 13 levels, kill a bunch of enemies, explore a bunch of different environments, and see a lot of cool stuff. One thing I do have to make clear though is that these levels are very much on rails, not in terms of the game actually moves you forward like a game like Transformers VR that's on PSVR2, but in terms of where they guide you. You're given some fairly big open areas at points, but you can't explore all of it because it tells you you're going to go out of bounds. You're very much locked in to certain areas, and the game even guides you with a yellow path to show you where to go. It's very much a light gun shooter, which, as a couple of other content creators have said, I didn't really expect. Based on the trailers, I thought this was going to be a COD-like campaign, and in certain ways, it basically is. In terms of setting and various story elements of different factions fighting, and even in terms of areas, guns, all that good stuff. But it's held back by the fact that it's very light gun-esque. You have your yellow path which tells you where to go, you follow the path and go to a point to spawn in some more enemies, you kill them and you move on to the next one, and you repeat that until the campaign is over. It takes about 2.5 hours to do on Normal Plus, which is the medium difficulty, and is the difficulty that they recommend you playing on. And overall, it doesn't feel that immersive in terms of freedom. The closest game I can really compare this to in terms of VR is Zero Caliber, a game that I've actually revisited fairly recently for my DPVR review. That one is a bit like a COD campaign. You're going through different missions, clearing buildings, taking areas, and fighting alongside friendlies to complete levels. However, where that game differs is that it gives you COD-sized open levels and not just these narrow kill boxes that Crossfire gives you. However, these do get bigger later on as the story goes on. Clearly the budget was put into the later levels to create some more bombastic scenes, so you do get some properly cool stuff in terms of level design, but it is quite restrictive in where you can move. There's no sprint option, so you're stuck with just one movement speed going around these levels. And it's very much the same peek out of cover, shoot, get back in cover, reload, peek out of cover, shoot, again and again and again, until everyone is dead. Let's cover visuals quickly, because there really isn't that much to talk about. It's essentially the case of the fidelity of the game is really high. Edges are very straight, there's no jaggedness, there's no aliasing. The game actually looks pretty good in terms of the sharpness of stuff, but the actual texture quality, aside from the guns, is nearing Quest 2 level graphics, especially the ground textures. They don't look great, but the actual weapon models do. Speaking of weapons, the gunplay is a bit of a mixed bag. I feel like the actual shooting is fairly decent, but it also adopts weirdly a mechanic that Firewall has, where you press your left trigger in and it gives you a small ADS mode. I don't really understand that, but aside from that, it's your general normal VR gun mechanics in terms of shooting. Aiming is a different beast entirely though. I jumped into the game and everything felt really weird. The aiming's done by default only with your right hand, and when you bring up your left hand to your gun, it stabilizes it. There's an option to turn this off, but that introduced even more problems that I'll get into. But by default, the aiming is done with your right and stabilized with your left. It doesn't matter where your left hand is, as long as it's somewhere near your right, you'll have stable aim. I actually preferred this option as opposed to the other one, and the other one is to turn off that completely. It disables the virtual stock and makes it so you have to grip the gun with both hands to aim it. However, this isn't like Pavlov aiming. You don't press in your left grip button to grab the front of your gun with your left hand. By default, you bring your hand up to your gun and it magnetically snaps onto it to stabilize it. However, if you've turned off virtual stock, this doesn't actually do anything, and it just allows your right hand to freely aim the gun while not being influenced by your left. But if you press the left grip button in while doing this, while holding the gun with your right hand, it then stabilizes like a normal Pavlov rifle. If you could follow that all, well done, but essentially, the aiming is very strange if you turn off the initial settings they have for you. It feels really rough, so I turned the virtual stock back on and just got used to it. It's weird at first, but I'd kind of recommend sticking with that option because it will feel okay eventually. By the end of the campaign, I was fairly happy with it. The aiming is just a completely mixed bag when you turn off the virtual stock and try and rely on stabilizing with both hands. It also implements the same feature as Saints and Sinners, which is that you can press the grip button to grab your gun, but there is no toggle option. However, if you rest your fingers on the capacitive touch of your grip button, it'll register them there, and then it'll keep the gun in your hands. This means you can just rest your hands on your controllers and essentially hold your gun with no problem, it won't fall out. Theoretically, that's how it should work. However, Crossfire has a very strange bug where occasionally, your character will decide just to let go of their weapon. I played around 3 to 4 hours of this game in total, and this has happened to me quite a few times. I've been shooting, been gripping both grip buttons and shooting fine, and then my character will just let go and drop the gun, and it'll go back to my holster, so I have to pick it up and go again, but then my character will drop the gun again. I don't really understand why this bug happens, but it happened fairly frequently. It got to the point where I was on the last level of the campaign, in a very intense moment about to finish the campaign, and I literally could not shoot the enemies because my gun would return to my holster every time I picked it up and tried to shoot. It made the game basically unplayable. And it's a shame because the gunplay is fairly fun and the gameplay is fairly fun when this bug doesn't occur. But I spent my 4 hours worried that my character would decide to just not fire and put his gun away. Anyway, enough with all of that confusing stuff because the mechanics really are more complex than they should be to explain for a game like this. Anyway, reloading is a middle ground between Pavlov and Firewall. It's not completely automated with a button press, but essentially you grab out another magazine with your left trigger, you put it near your gun, near the magwell, and it does the reloading for you. I would prefer that the player just does the reloading manually completely. It might be the case in realism mode, but I don't think it is. And speaking of realism mode, I can't figure out a way to turn it on. I've completed the campaign and it still didn't unlock, so who knows. But essentially, yeah, reloading is assisted. And unfortunately, most of the time, for almost all the guns I was using per level, and you get a new gun per level, so you have a different loadout every time, which I do think is pretty neat, and shows off the big arsenal that the game has to offer. The reload animations were broken though. My hands would be misaligned, the magazines would be the wrong way round, and it was overall a very janky experience in terms of visually looking at the reloads happening. Crossfire actually throws quite a few enemy types at you as well. They're not very inspired or out there, except for some later missions. The second to last mission of the game kind of just goes off the rails completely and throws some weird enemies at you, but for the majority of the campaign, you're just fighting normal men with guns, big juggernauts with either grenade launchers, hammers, or miniguns, shield dudes, some of them with flashbangs attached to their shield like Rainbow Six Siege's Blitz, sniper dudes, rocket launcher dudes, helicopters, and APCs. These are just all generic military guys you're fighting, but they are pretty fun to fight, and different engagements lean into using different weapons, which I feel is pretty cool, because you have to choose which weapons you want to use to deal with different types of enemies. However, you can't pick and choose your loadout per mission, you just get given 2 preset guns, and they're different every time, but you are just given 2 preset ones. You also can't pick up enemy weapons that have been dropped, aside from special ones that the game intends you to pick up. There are weapons around the map that you can pick up and use, but from what I can see, you can't replace your current weapons with them. Maybe there is a way, but I did try to a couple times, and they just fell through, and I could only use the weapons that the game assigned to me for that mission. In multiplayer co-op and PvE, you can choose the weapons you have if you've unlocked them, but in the campaign, you're stuck to the ones that it gives you, unfortunately. Aside from all that as well, we have an actual progression system. You do level up, you do get money, not from the campaign, because I didn't seem to get any from that. I think it's from the co-op missions and the horde mode, but you'll be able to buy essentially guns to use in missions, upgrade them, give them different skins, all that good stuff. And I think that's really cool. That adds a bit of replay value. That's one thing that Pavlov is kind of missing to me, is that progression system. You kind of just get everything from the start. That's why I like Firewall 2, even though Firewall's is a little bit slow. It seems that Crossfire's is fairly decent, so I'll give them props for that. In the campaign, you also get a friendly AI. From the trailers, I thought it'd be the case where you're moving forward with a squad of maybe 3 AI, but you only get 1, and you might as well have none because they're completely useless. they will stand there for ages, shooting bullets and not actually killing anybody, which is just very frustrating, to be honest, when you're being pelted up by enemies and your AI friend will either just stand there and get shot, or shoot and not actually do any damage. If you're looking to buy Crossfire Sierra Squad for the campaign, I would say wait for a sale. It'll give you maybe around 2 to 2.5 hours of playtime if you're only going for one run of it. There are a lot of 2-player missions, and I'm not sure if you can actually jump into these solo. I'll have to check that out. I didn't get time to today. So if you can play those 50 missions solo as well, that's actually pretty solid. Although they are just separate missions, they're not a campaign like the 13 campaign missions are. But if you've got a friend to play with, it's probably worth the price for those 50 missions, despite, you know, the janky mechanics. The game is actually quite fun. I feel like I've just absolutely railed on it the entire time, but I really didn't mean to. I just had quite a frustrating experience. Underneath some of these issues is a genuinely fun light gun shooter. I just wish I knew it was a light gun shooter before buying it, and I don't really want anyone else to jump into it with the preconception that this is, you know, a milsim game or even a COD style game. In some ways it is in terms of the set pieces and action, but in others it's just not. So yeah, Crossfire Sierra Squad is a bit of a weird one. I did enjoy my time with it, don't get me wrong. I just feel like the campaign was a little short, a little rushed, and the gun systems are a little light for me. Coupled with the fact that there's a yellow line pointing where you should go in every single level, and the enclosed nature of the levels, coupled with stuff like enemy health bars always being there, it did make it slightly hard to enjoy at times, plus a couple of game-breaking bugs where my character would just de-equip his weapons out of nowhere. But anyway, I hope you did enjoy this video. Apologies, it's been a bit more negative than usual. I just had a bit of a strange experience with this game. If you've played it, please do let me know what you think. And if you really like the look of Crossfire and don't mind its light gun nature and want to go for it, feel free. I don't want to sit here and go, game is bad, because in truth it's not. It's just different to what I expected and doesn't really fit what I wanted from it. I already know a couple people in some VR group chats that I'm in who enjoyed the hell out of this game, and that's great. It's just not for me, unfortunately. Maybe co-op will make it a lot more fun. I might follow this video up with a co-op one. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope you did enjoy it. If you did, feel free to like and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video.